Andy Johnson. This is part 2 of our teacher professional development workshop, Understanding Reading, and we are going to look at 2 theoretical perspectives. Questions to think about: what is reading? How does the brain recognize words during reading? What do struggling readers need to become better at recognizing words while reading? And why are diphthongs and trigraphs so very important? And here's an activity, a comprehension activity. I use this with expository text. It's called Prepost Confirmation. You present a series of declarative statements. At least one of them is not true. Before reading, you go over it, and students mark yes, no, or uncertain. That's the pre. And post, you go through and you correct or recognize and make any corrections you need. So in your head, during reading, information flows one way from the page to the cortex. What do you think? Yes, no, uncertain. Word reading accuracy leads to better comprehension. Well, we already found that out. That would be no. A heavy dose of phonics instruction will enable struggling readers to catch up. Yes, no, uncertain. Proficient readers often insert words that aren't on the written page when reading orally. I think we kind of found that out. Good readers look at every word on the page when reading. Teaching students to recognize diphthongs, trigraphs, and R-controlled vowels is incredibly important. Yes, no, uncertain. Consonants are more important than vowels in recognizing words. Right? That's a pre-reading strategy. You can also use it, as I'm doing, as a pre-lesson strategy. So let's take a look first at the phonological processing model. This is based on the bottom-up theory of reading. It says that reading is merely sounding out words. Reading is sounding out words. A model, by the way, is a construct that explains how something works. And the phonological processing model is called the simple view of reading. That information goes from the text to the relay station in the brain. The thalamus is processed and then goes up to the cortex, according to this model, the phonological processing model. Here, reading is thought to involve 4 sub-processes. You perceive the words and letters on the page. You put sounds to all the letters in each word. You put the individual sounds together to identify the word, and you put the words together to create ideas. And in the microseconds available as your eyes pounce upon the word, poof, magic, reading happens, speech in the head occurs. It's called the phonological processing model. According to this model, the best way to move from struggling to proficient readers is more sounding out instruction. Because reading, according to this model, is sounding out words. So a bit more sounding out word instruction is the best way to move struggling readers to become proficient readers. And again, according to this model, there's a one-way flow of information. The words are on the page. The eyes hit them, goes to the relay station in the brain called the thalamus, and up to the cortex. However, there's some data that is unaccounted for. And by the way, this model, phonological processing model, leads to a great ununderstanding of the reading process. It serves more to ununderstand reading than to understand it. And this sounding out word model is limited because it doesn't account for a wide array of data, including these 4 facts. This data is unaccounted for in this model. First of all, proficient readers look at only about 60% of the words on the page. Of these fixated words, where our eyeballs stop, our eyes usually stop on only 1 or 2 letters. And we can perceive only those things upon which our eyes fixate. So that means our brain is filling in the blanks to create reading. So readers are using much more than the words and letters on the page to create meaning. More on that later. Second, Proficient readers often insert words that are semantically or syntactically correct. Again, this is called a miscue. It tells us that information besides what's on the page is being used to construct meaning. The boy run down the road. Meaning is maintained. That's a semantic miscue. It's a meaning maintaining miscue. The girl jumped on the bed. That's a syntactically correct. It's a meaning disrupting miscue, but it's syntactically correct. It tells us that the reader is using grammar and syntax, and that's a good thing. 3, more information is flowing from the cortex down to the thalamus than from the thalamus up. Yes, we take in data from our senses, in this case our eyes. It goes to the relay station. Yes, yes, yes. But at the same time, almost 10 times more information is flowing from the cortex down than from the thalamus up. What's being used, what's in the head, is being used to create meaning with print. Almost 10 times more information flowing down. And the 4th bit of data, information from the cortex is used to direct the eyes during reading. That means that higher level cognitive processes drive or mediate lower level letter and word recognition processes. So before we go on to these other theoretical models, a bit about phonics before we look at the other theoretical model. I am not against phonics instruction. It's not the what of phonics instruction, it's the how and how much of phonics instruction that is the issue here. So phonics instruction is putting a sound to a letter. The reader sees a letter and is able to associate it with a certain sound. Now, in all human languages, there are approximately 200 phonemes. A phoneme is the sound within a word. Within the English language, there are 44 phonemes. In our alphabet, there's 27 letters. That means we're about 18 letters short. So rather than invent 18 new letters, somebody decided that we should put the existing letters together in exciting new combinations. Hence, we get diphthongs and murmur diphthongs and diagraphs and triagraphs and the schwa sound and R-controlled vowels and vowel blends and CVC patterns and CVCV patterns. You get the idea. And we have, of course, we have exceptions. Yes, we have exceptions to the rule. Yes, obviously. So, by the way, when a program or method claims that it is research-based, as many of them do, that focus on phonics only, letter sounds only, when they say they are research-based, they say that research shows that they are effective. You should say effective for whom? For what purpose? Under what circumstances? How much? And for how long? Simply saying something is research-based doesn't mean that it is. It doesn't mean that the research was very good. It doesn't mean that a valid question was asked. And it doesn't mean that the data were correctly collected, measured, or interpreted. As well, research is different from collecting data. A lot of these for-profit programs, they'll collect data and they'll say, oh, research shows that. Research is not research unless and until it is subjected to blind peer review and published in an academic journal of some sort. But blind peer review is essential for research to be research. Until then, you're just collecting data. Now, a lot of these research-based programs may indeed result in a blip in low-level sounding out word scores. This blip usually means that you've taught something, you measured that something you taught, and you found more of that something you taught after having taught it. But 3 questions you should ask. of these blip-making programs. As a result of the holy blip, are students better able to create meaning with print? And that's what reading is. It's a meaning-making endeavor, not a sounding out word endeavor. Does the research-based blip-making reading program improve students' ability to comprehend and to make sense of what they're reading? Over time, is the blip-making program more effective than reading and talking about good books, writing and sharing stories, and learning skills in authentic contexts? Now, any exposure to print is helpful. Even blip-making low-level skills-based programs have some impact. The question always comes back to this: is blip-making more impactful than meaning-making? And that's the question. And the last question, does blip-making programs, does the program help children fall in love with books? Let's take a look at the neurocognitive model. It accounts for the 4 facts previously looked at. It is based on the interactive theory. What is in the head interacts with what's on the page to create meaning. And reading is creating meaning. According to the neurocognitive or psycholinguistic model of reading, reading is creating meaning with print. According to this model, the brain uses 3 cueing systems to recognize words during reading. We use the knowledge stored in the cortex to constantly reach out and micro-predict the words in a sentence as we're reading. This is called recognizing words. These micro-predictions enable our brains to work more efficiently. And our brain uses 3 cueing systems to make these micro-predictions, to recognize words during the act of reading: semantic, syntactic, and phonological. And they're systems, meaning various parts of the brain work together. So let's take a look at each one. Semantic means meaning, or context, or background. Of the 3 cueing systems, the semantic cueing system is the most efficient in terms of processing and space and working memory. For example, semantics has to do with meaning. Birds fly in the sky, fish swim in. Most of us would be able to say water using background knowledge, or certainly if we had a single letter clue, then yes, fish swim in water. The monkey ate a bug. Most of us could fill that out. She down the hill, fell down the hill. That is the semantic cueing system. Syntax has to do with grammar and word order. And I'll show you an example of this in a little bit, but grammar, word order, sentence structure. She blanked down the hill. We know that's a verb. Fish do something on water, verb. The something sat in the sun, a noun. The dog did something on the rug. That is a verb. Most of our syntax is learned implicitly by being exposed to the language. And that's another reason why reading a lot and reading a lot to your kids is important. Hearing the sound and structure of good language, you develop a knowledge of grammar that's learned implicitly. And the last one, the third cueing system, is the phonological cueing system. That means using letters, putting letters to sounds to build up words. This one is the least efficient in terms of space and working memory. Because in working memory, we can only hold about 7 bits of information in working memory, and we can hold it there for about 15 seconds. That's not a lot of things. It's not a lot of time. Now, I could hold 7 letters in working memory, 7 words in working memory, or 7 ideas in working memory. Which is more efficient for creating meaning with print? Ideas. Ideas hold more things than letters and words. Proof of the 3 cueing systems, because some people still call me a silly little bald man online for talking about the 3 cueing systems. Well, there's just too much proof. Now, when you encounter a word, do you really do this in the microseconds? Do you sound it out? St, sta, 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 stom, sta, stam, sta, sta, schwa sound, stom, stam, stamp. Oh, it's stamp. Yeah, I know what a stamp. Stampy. What's a stampy? Oh, stamped. Yes, stamped. I should have known that. It's, oh dear, stampede. Do you really go through that process? No, I don't think so. You see the word holistically in the context of a sentence, and you're able to recognize it instantly. The buffalo started to stampede. Most of you are able to just kind of bloop, lightly dance upon that word. And since buffaloes and stampede are often associated, if you've watched a lot of old westerns like I have growing up, this acts as a primer to give you a clue as to what that word is. Now notice the difference. When you see the word in isolation, your eyes tend to go like this versus doop, lightly jump on it. Still don't believe me? Well, that's okay. The following paragraph contains 110 words. Read it as quickly as you can. Ready? Go. Okay. Hopefully you got through most of that. Okay. I'm going to ask you to read the same 110 words a second time. Since you've read it once, you should be able to read it faster the second time, no? All right, go ahead. What? Away drove and car his in jump could he, what? What the heck? It was the same 110 words. Was your reading rate the same? What about fluency? Prosody. That means the pauses and inflection sound similar to oral speech. Was it the same? Rate the same? I would guess that it was pretty choppy and stilted, very much like a struggling reader, that you went letter by letter, word by word to create meaning. Why is that? Because you are deprived of both semantic and syntactic clues as you are reading. If reading was simply sounding out words, as some people insist, you would be able to read that in exactly the same way, same speed as you read that. But you did not, because you are deprived of semantic and syntactic information. So, 3 other things to consider. During the act of reading, your brain actually uses as few letter clues as possible to recognize words. That enables us to operate efficiently. We use the file folders in our head called schema to make sense of what we're reading. As well, we don't do that. It would take too long. It would use too much space in working memory. We use minimal letter clues, and our eyes do not stop on every word. And the last thing, vowels are not very important. Now, all the vowels have been removed in the following paragraph, except if they came at the beginning of the word. Once upon a time, there was a handsome prince. He lived in a castle. One day, an evil wizard came and turned him into a frog. Most of us can read that. So how important are vowels anyway? Okay, you still don't believe me? I'm going to give you a sentence in which all the consonants are removed. And to give you a hint, this sentence is about a bear in the woods. All right? Can anyone read that? Okay, I guess not. What about that? Most of you can read most of that. The big black bear ran through the woods. So how important are vowels anyway? Why are we getting all worked up about digraphs, trigraphs, the schwa sound, R-controlled vowels, and these other things. What is reading? Creating meaning with print. How does the brain recognize words during reading? Well, we use 3 cueing systems. What do struggling readers need to become better at recognizing words while reading? We need activities to develop all 3 cueing systems. Why are diphthongs and trigraphs so very important? They are not. This is the end of part 2.